sufficient?
Yeah, because you're probably aware that it's Sexual Abuse and Sexual Violence Awareness Week this week. So what I'm specifically concerned with is if an allegation or a disclosure is made about an assault perpetrated by one student on another, what steps should a school take to protect the victim and ensure that any investigation of the accused would be fair?
Well, I mean, obviously this would be done on a case-by-case basis. We would look at the school's records to say to see where this comes out. It is extremely rare that an inspector will get this while they're actually on site. So you are relying on the school's recording of the issues and then looking at records and then seeing how they dealt with it. And it's how they dealt with it is the key thing here.
Can I just ask, do inspectors actually ask to look at school records or look at recording of incidents of peer-on-peer abuse?
Well, they would look at any kind of incident.
Would they ask for it?
Yes. Oh, yeah, totally, yes.
So inspectors, just to make sure I've got this clear, so an Ofsted inspector should go to a school and ask for records from that school of any incidents of peer-on-peer sexual abuse?
Not narrowly peer-on-peer sexual abuse, all sorts of safeguarding incidents.
But that would be one of them. You would expect to have that information.
Yes, and just to take an example from a report that was published fairly recently, where there was some internal discussion about the seriousness of what was shown, but the safeguarding conversation in that case led to unpacking from the incidents that the school that had happened in relation to children's school, that the school had not been notifying the local authority, for example, about things which absolutely should have been notified, and we took that very seriously, and was one of the reasons why that school got an inadequate.
So could I ask then, does it make a difference if the assault takes place outside of the school?
Of course it does.
So if a situation is aware of where one child has raped another child, would the school still have to deal with that issue if it had happened outside of the school, or whether it had happened in the school, in your opinion?
Well, there are very different things. If something has happened if a serious incident has happened on school premises, that throws up a whole series of questions.
But the question is what happens if it has happened outside of the school? So if you've got a situation where, for example, 2 15-year-olds, something had happened at a party, one of the children had been raped, would you expect those children both to be placed in the same class by the school the next week?
This is an incredibly difficult one, because we also need to make sure that schools don't leap into being sort of extrajudicial authorities that declare somebody guilty who might not have been charged, let alone convicted. So the handling of situations like that, especially whereas often happens with these kinds of cases, neither party makes a formal complaint, is incredibly difficult for schools. Okay, you cannot generalise and say that the school must take action against somebody about a child. They've got to use the information they've got.
So if, for example, a parent had contacted Ofsted about a situation that had happened, which had been reported to the police and was being investigated, would you expect the Ofsted inspectors, therefore, to take the evidence from that parent before making a judgment on how effective safeguarding is in that school?
We would expect the police to have been involved in a case like this, and we would.
But if Ofsted's judgment carry a significant weight, and I'm sure you accept this, and parents will be looking at, and one of the things they will look at is safeguarding as to whether or not they choose to send their child to that school. Now, if you as Ofsted are going to make a claim that a school is safeguarding effective, surely one of the things that you should be doing is asking that school for data around sexual abuse and sexual violence on peer happening in that school, or at least listening to any parents who have made complaints or allegations regarding safeguarding.
And that happens, and we have this wider conversation about safeguarding that considers, that explores and considers the different kinds of things that may have happened in the school. We get all the complaints that we've had feed through into the record that the inspector takes in and inform the
And
inspection.
at the point of inspection, any parent could get hold of the lead inspector and ask for at least a telephone call to discuss those things. That would be where it could be raised.
I won't go into individual cases, but I am aware where that hasn't happened. So how does a disclosure or allegation impact upon the inspector's assessment of a school's safeguarding arrangements? So say that happens, and it is listened to. A parent phones and says, this incident's happened, my daughter's had to be in the same classroom as somebody who has raped her. How will that impact on the assessment that you give for safeguarding?
Well, that would set up a discussion with the school, and then we'd look at the various different bits of evidence as to what the situation was. And if it was clear that children were being treated inappropriately and dealt with inappropriately, then that would have an impact on the safeguarding judgment and indeed, as a result, leadership and management.
And my final question, just to go back to earlier on, you said you would be looking at data. So one of the things Ofsted and schools don't do is actually collect data on the prevalence and incidence of sexual violence and harassment. So is that something that you would encourage schools to do and make available to Ofsted inspectors?
It's any serious incident the school should record, and that would be part of the safeguarding conversations.
Can I ask if you'll ask your inspectors to ask for that when they go to schools?
They would ask to look at those records. I think what you're saying is a kind of aggregation of numbers.
Yes,
but
of the prevalence and incidence of sexual violence.
We don't record category by category. We don't have a recording job, and we don't go category by category.
What I'm asking is if you'll ask schools to record that.
I think that's an issue for the DfE to ask for that. If that was available, it would be something we would consider. What we do is look at individual cases and the broader situation of the culture of